You mentioned about the genetic diversity and just the racial diversity that we see in human beings. And this student said that he had read that there are different races based on the amount of Neanderthal DNA we have in our genome. Is this true? If so, how do we understand this?
Yeah, well, it is true that scientists think they have detected the evidence for Neanderthal DNA in the human genome. And it is true that depending on the particular region of the world that your ancestors are from, you're going to have differing amounts of Neanderthal DNA. So if your family traces an ancestry to Africa, it's very unlikely that you have Neanderthal DNA in your genome. But if you come from Europe or from Asia, or if your ancestry is Native American, you most likely will have a Neanderthal DNA in your genome, probably 2 to 4%. And if you're from Asia, and if your ancestry is from Polynesia, you also would have a genetic signature that comes from another mysterious hominin called the Denisovans that nobody, or the Denisovans that nobody knows much about. These are these mysterious hominins that people think existed, that we have DNA evidence for, but we don't have a fossil record for. So it is true that we do have differing genetic signatures for hominins in our genome, both Neanderthals and the Denisovans.
And would this be evidence of interbreeding between Neanderthals and humans?
Yes, that's how the scientific community views it. Is that modern humans arose in East Africa, and as we began to migrate around the world, we would have encountered Neanderthals, and some people argue that there were a limited number of interbreeding events that happened when humans encountered Neanderthals in the Middle East. Others argue that interbreeding took place throughout the time that humans were migrating through Europe and through Asia, that there were multiple interbreeding events. But that's how they would argue that DNA wound up in our genomes, is through these interbreeding interactions.
And how would interbreeding be possible? Because I know, humans can't just breed with anything. So
Yeah.
if there's interbreeding possibilities, wouldn't that show just how human-like these creatures are?
Well, I mean, there are people that would argue that the fact that we are able to interbreed reflects that we must have emerged from a shared ancestor. But I would argue that you could also view that interbreeding as reflecting the fact that we have shared designs, and those shared designs allow for interbreeding to take place. Now, the data indicates that in the way you arrive at these conclusions is very complex, but the data indicates that the Neanderthal human hybrids were just on the cusp of being able to survive. In other words, there's no evidence that there's any Neanderthal DNA in the Y chromosome, meaning that if the hybrid was a male, it either didn't survive or it wasn't able to reproduce. And so that
Okay.
the only hybrids that survived would be female, and they were just on the cusp of being able to hang on and survive. And so this to me suggests that either from an evolutionary perspective, the divergence between humans and Neanderthals was so extensive that we were just on the cusp of no longer being able to interbreed, that we were really becoming separate species. Or if you look at it from a creation model perspective, that the similarities between us reflect shared designs, and that we just happen to have enough similarity with Neanderthals that when we interbred, that on occasion hybrids would have survived that interbreeding event.